everybody? It's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. So today we're talking about terrorism some more, and we're going to start talking about government response to terrorism. It's a whole new world, and things aren't simple. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is Al-Qaeda. Now, if I just jump in here right now and start trying to explain to you what Al-Qaeda is, it might throw you off a little bit if you've never heard of it. All right, Al-Qaeda, spoiler alert, is a terrorist organization, like a terrorist corporation. All right, let me walk you through the story for this to make sense. All right, so this is going to start in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is in the Middle East. We're going to go back to 1979. So this is in the middle of the Cold War. America's trying to take things over. The Soviet Union's trying to take things over. The Soviet Union invades Afghanistan because that is below, the countries above it were satellite nations. Russia is going to invade Afghanistan in 1979. All right. Now, the people in Afghanistan absolutely do not want to be controlled by an outside force. Kind of like Viet Minh, we had talked about with Vietnam, did not want to be controlled by an outside force and fought viciously against the Soviets. One of the main orchestrators of the resistance to the Soviet, because again, the Soviet military is legit. So the Afghanistan can't like necessarily just pull their army up, go toe-to-toe with the Soviet military and win. Just like the Vietnamese army couldn't go toe-to-toe with the United States military and win. So it was a lot more guerrilla warfare and behind-the-scenes attacks, headed in large part by this guy, this anti-Soviet guy. He's super against Soviet taking over. So because this guy is against the Soviet Union, America actually supports him and the people that are trying to fight in Afghanistan for being taken over by Soviet Russia. Because remember, containment, can't let it spread. This guy's name's Osama Bin Laden. Alright? America provides him and other groups in Afghanistan with weapons and bombs and tools to fight off the invading force of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union realizes it's a lost cause. The Soviet Union starts collapsing. So the Soviet Union pulls out and Afghanistan remains its own country. Now, it was heavily damaged and it's a very poor region, as we had talked about, which is common where these terrorist cells are going to arise. Afghanistan is also strongly Muslim. I would say generally a fundamentalist Muslim group, not extreme. The term fundamentalist gets thrown around a lot as having an absolute definition. Very religious people that are Muslim in Afghanistan. So, Osama bin Laden, who was, I guess in this case, if you're anti-communist, would be considered a good guy, he has created an organization called Al-Qaeda. All right? Al-Qaeda is basically a loose-knit group of fundamentalist, extremist, I would guess, Muslims at different parts around the world, focused in Afghanistan, but they are designed to basically prevent any non-Muslim influence into their country. And it has a far-reaching, so these are radical Islamic groups, but you can see multiple of these are Al-Qaeda associates. All right? The government of Afghanistan is called the Taliban. The Taliban doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't say, Al-Qaeda doesn't necessarily work for the Taliban, but the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are cool with each other, knowing Al-Qaeda does some shady stuff. Because after the Soviet Union, what ends up happening is Al-Qaeda starts growing into what we would classify today as a terrorist organization, helping out other places they feel like are unnecessarily being influenced by non-Muslim groups in their country. This brings us to Osama bin Laden that, if you've never heard of him, we're going to get to it. So Osama bin Laden is in charge of Al-Qaeda for quite a while. Now, Osama bin Laden, through a variety of ways, becomes wealthy. All right. He's not a gazillionaire, but he's a millionaire. And in the Middle East, when it's a very poor area, that's a lot of money. Osama Bin Laden and Al Qaeda become a type of terrorist group that is terrifying to try to figure out how would you fight against this. Osama Bin Laden and Al Qaeda turn into basically Shark Tank. Now, based on when you're watching this, because this is being recorded in 2022, I don't know how dated that reference is. I need to explain to you what Shark Tank is. Shark Tank is it's a show where these millionaire investors, they sit back in their nice little chairs, and people with new inventions or ideas, they come and they try to pitch it to these rich guys, and basically see if the rich guys will fund their idea, and then the rich guys make money off of it as well. It's like a business show, but basically they're rich. They're like, all right, what's your idea? And like some poor guy has this like, I figured out a way to, make free gas. I don't know. And they're like, I will invest in you. That's what Shark Tank is. All right. People with ideas trying to get rich people to invest in them. That is what Osama bin Laden does as far as terrorism goes. So if you have a good idea for a terrorist attack, you will take it to Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and present it to him to see if this is a good idea in his mind for a terrorist attack. This is exactly what happens with September 11th, 2001. There is a group of people from Saudi Arabia, extreme Muslim fundamentalists. Saudi Arabia is not known for terrorism. It was just a group of people from Saudi Arabia. And they came up with the idea for the airplane attacks on the World Trade Center. They don't have any money. So what they do is they travel to Afghanistan, meet with Osama bin Laden, explain the plan to him, and he says, I like that plan, and I will fund it. And so the travel of the terrorists over to the United States, them training over in the United States, literally are in flight school, learning how to fly these planes that will be hijacked on September 11th, 2001, all funded by Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. So, the question here is, why are terrorist groups like Al Qaeda so dangerous in a modern society? It's because the terrorist group can attract people from all over the world. Like, Saudi Arabia is an ally of America. We get a lot of our oil from Saudi Arabia. These were people from Saudi Arabia that went and searched out these like terrorist organizations. So it's not just in my backyard, I want to do it. Groups like Al Qaeda give the ability to, people who wouldn't have the funds to be a terrorist, the ability to be a terrorist. So they basically enable terrorism, and it will lead to September 11th, which is absolutely an atrocity. But pause me, answer that completely, and we'll move on. So, what today is going to talk about is how the government responds to terrorism. And it doesn't necessarily go well. Because the largest terrorist attack in American history was September 11th, 2001, we look very closely at how America, the most powerful military on earth when this happens in 2001, reacts to it and what we can learn from it, because it is crazy from all sides. All right. So when the attack on September 11th, and when you get to American history, we'll go through step by step of the details of that day. But thousands of people were killed with a terrorist attack funded by Al Qaeda in the United States at multiple locations on September 11th, 2001. Here's what the government response is to that, because this isn't a country, all right? This is a group of people that are attacking you. So it's not a military invasion. Well, the first thing, and this happens in the United States, and a lot of other countries get something similar, and in the United States it's called the Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security gets created, in which after 9/11, in order to do everything in their power to prevent another terrorist attack from happening. And you're like, great, can't possibly be any controversy with that. Obviously, anything that would prevent another 9/11 from happening would be acceptable, right? Well, that's the logic. However, Homeland Security basically gives the United States a lot of ability to spy on its own citizens. And there ends up being a debate in modern society. How much freedom are you willing to give up for the government to protect you? Can the government go through your automated through your text messages and your phone calls and things like that? Where is that line of your level of comfort, all in the name of trying to prevent another terrorist attack from happening? Because all the people that came here that attacked us on September 11th came here legally. They had no background. There's no red flags that would have gone up. All right. We're going to touch on that a little bit in future lessons on the balance between government and citizens in the modern world over how much freedom and privacy are you willing to give up for safety. But let's talk about the actual impact that the United States, who was attacked on 9/11, had because of this. Well, when America is attacked on 9/11, there's never been an attack like that on American soil. The closest would have been Pearl Harbor, but Pearl Harbor was in Hawaii, and Hawaii wasn't even a state at the time, and that was an attack by military on a military. This is an attack on civilians. I was a freshman in college when it happened, so I was 18 years old. I remember it distinctly when this happened. And for a couple of days, everybody was just shocked, like trying to process what happened. And then you could just feel the tide turn in America of, all right, who's about to get it? Like there was this desire to go fight back. Because every time America had ever been attacked previously, America immediately responded. Well, who do you fight against? Everybody that was on those planes, all the terrorists killed themselves. They were on the planes too. There's no survivors of the terrorist attack. So Osama Bin Laden comes out and says, I'm responsible for this because I funded it. Death to America. America's like, oh, thank you for giving us a target. All right. Who are you? We kind of ignored him. We knew he was an issue for a while. But America realizes that Al-Qaeda and Osama Bin Laden, who were responsible for this attack, they're in Afghanistan. So America asked the Afghanistan government, the Taliban, hey, Taliban, give us Osama bin Laden. We need to bring him to justice. And the Taliban's like, nah, that's our boy. The reaction in America was good. I'm glad they said no, because this allows America to invade Afghanistan. The United States invades Afghanistan in order to go in, overthrow the Taliban because now they are supporting this terrorist, get rid of, find Osama bin Laden, bring him to justice, and wipe out Al-Qaeda. All right. So there is a massive invasion into Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan, this is pretty much what Afghanistan looks like. It's incredibly hot. It's a lot of mountain. It's very rocky. So when America gets to Afghanistan, America just starts bombing stuff from these massive, because America has the most elite military on earth, bombs the crap out of stuff. Bombs more stuff. And more. And more. And more. Blow up everything that we can. All right? Looking for Osama bin Laden. Keep in mind, this is not a government-sanctioned organization in Al-Qaeda. They just tolerate them. So these bombs are going off in civilian populations in places that we believe Al-Qaeda is. So Osama bin Laden is 6'6", and he is on a dialysis machine. There's not a lot of those in poor areas. America, desperately looking for Osama bin Laden, never find him in Afghanistan. However, America does wreck enough shop in Afghanistan that the Taliban loses power because we blow up everything we possibly can. So the Taliban is the legitimate government of Afghanistan, and America goes through and just annihilates any ability for them to govern at all, right? Because as long as the Taliban's gone, that's got to be a win somehow, right? So the Taliban gets pushed out of power. We've blown everything up, but we don't find Saddam Hussein. We find some high-level Al-Qaeda experts, but we do not find Osama bin Laden. So the question here is, why did the United States invade Afghanistan? if the attackers from 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia? So we talked about that. Think about that. Pause me. Answer that completely. And we're moving on. So, America, and I remember this distinctly when it was happening because this is my formative years. America goes even further with the Department of Homeland Security and passes the USA Patriot Act, which sounds very nationalist, but in America, this allows the United States government to spy, which is under the whole Department of Homeland Security concept, to spy on American people to make sure there's not going to be homegrown terrorist threats. There are actually multiple terrorist threats stopped in America before they ever take place. However, the United States government is also now has the authority to read people's text messages and emails and listen in on their phone calls without them knowing about it in order to stop these terrorist attacks. So the question becomes, how much balance are people willing to give up? How much privacy are they willing to give up for the government to keep them safe from a terrorist attack? And that's an ongoing issue in the modern world. But let's get back to the actual war. So you got Afghanistan here. We blew it up. Taliban's gone. Don't find Osama Bin Laden. It's been like a year. Nobody's fighting back in Afghanistan. We just decimated. We blew it all up. America is still angry over September 11th. So, Iraq. What? Yeah. Exactly. You have to go with me here on this to understand the mentality. America wants to fight somebody. We don't really see anybody fight in the Middle East. All right? Except we know there's a bad guy in Iraq. The bad guy is a guy named Saddam Hussein. Now, in the early 1990s, this guy, who's a turd, he is a massive jerk, treats his people awful. This guy had invaded Kuwait in the early 1990s, a country just below him. Let me go back to that map. Just that tiny little country just below him. Iraq had invaded Kuwait for their oil supply. The rest of the Middle East does not like Saddam Hussein, but he had a huge military, and they're like, oh, who can stop him? And in the 1990s, say, hey, America, will you come kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait? And America said, yes, we will. So America goes over there, blows up Saddam Hussein's army, kicks him out of Kuwait, and America is treated as like a hero in the Middle East. America loves this. Hooray, this is awesome. While everybody was happy with this, we didn't want to extend the war in the 1990s to go into Iraq and kill Saddam Hussein. This guy. Because we're like, man, after we wiped out his army, he's such a turd to his people, his own people will wipe him out. They don't. And so over the next 10 years, Saddam Hussein strengthens his power in Iraq. Nobody in the Middle East really likes Saddam Hussein. He's a jerk. His own people don't like him. He's a dictator. He's a turd. All right? Had nothing to do with September 11th or terrorism. Nothing. But we're already there. We already have our weapons, our tanks, all our other stuff in Afghanistan. And America's fury. We decide, you know what? We're not going to sit back and wait for somebody else to attack us. All right? Wait for, September 11th, the sequel, before we go do something about it. So America turns their attention to Iraq. They know this guy is still there. All right? They also believe he has weapons of mass destruction, nukes. Now, he's already gassed his own people. This guy is not a good guy. There is a belief that he has weapons of mass destruction and would be willing, because he doesn't like America. We had already beat him in a war 10 years before, that he might sell those weapons of mass destruction to terrorists to use against us. That ends up being the belief. This is the vice president of the United States under George Bush. All right. And he says, simply stated, there is no doubt Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction, like nukes. There is no doubt he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us. So, all right, it was just planes flying in the towers. Now, terrorists could bring a nuke into the United States and set it off and killing untold numbers of people. America becomes convinced that there are weapons of mass destruction and Saddam Hussein will use them for just absolute horrific atrocities if America doesn't jump in now. So America's like, all right, we're going to invade Iraq. And they're like, whoa, that's right. There's new rules to invading people. See, when we invaded Afghanistan, the United Nations understood what happened with September 11th and said, okay, America, go do your thing. And they invaded Afghanistan. So the United Nations was involved in the invasion of Afghanistan. Now, granted, as we have talked about in previous units, when the United Nations says it's wartime, it basically just lets America go do it. Because America has the biggest army, just let them go do it all. So nobody else really helps America whenever the United Nations says go to war. So when it was time to go to Iraq, the head general, and he's a Secretary of State at the time, Colin Powell, this guy was actually the head general of the military when they defeated Saddam Hussein the first time in the 1990s. Saddam Hussein goes to the United Nations and says, hey, we need to go into Iraq. And the United Nations is like, why? And he's like, they have weapons of mass destruction. And they say, oh, yeah, I mean, that's not good and all. What rule have they broken? He's like, you know he's a terrorist. Like, we know he is, but are you sure he has weapons of mass destruction? And can you, like, verify that he is planning to use them for something negative? And not just, preventative measures. And the United States says, we have all the proof that we need. We know it is. And they're like, okay. But before we give you the okay, before we get involved here, we have to send all these inspectors in order to make sure that it's there or not. And the United States says, no, we're not waiting. And the United Nations, the rest of the world, gets together and says, all right, America, well then, no. You can't invade Iraq. What you going to do now? This is where the world changes. And everybody says, ruh-roh. America says, oh, we can't do it. Okay. We're going to go do it anyway. Who's coming with me? Nobody else in the world is willing to do it. England, they're like, because ever since World War II, they do dumb stuff with us. England's like, I'll come with you, America. So the world's like, we forbid you to invade Iraq. And America says, yeah, but y'all don't even have a military. Every time there's a war, you want America to do it. Guess what? You can't stop me. And America invades Iraq. The UN says don't do it, America does it. Not only does America invade Iraq, we fully acknowledge we have not been provoked by Iraq. It is called a preemptive strike. And we tell the world, we're going in here to get rid of the bad guys, get rid of these weapons of mass destruction. And we're saving the world whether y'all want to or not. All right? It's called a preemptive strike. We're attacking them before they even do anything bad. That's scary. Because, again, they haven't actually done anything to get invaded. So America swarms into Iraq, blows stuff up. These statues of Saddam Hussein get torn down. And once again, America blows the crap out of this country. Just dropping bombs, destroying stuff, blowing stuff up. Absolute annihilation of stuff. 3 months in, we're looking for Saddam Hussein. We end up finding Saddam Hussein. This is an actual photograph of him being pulled out of a hole by a Marine. He'd been living in for 3 months. You can tell by the big beard. That Saddam Hussein is captured by the Americans. Now, America fully expected we show up and we take Saddam Hussein out. Since everybody in Iraq hates him, they're going to love America. They're going to treat us like liberators. That was the term that got used. So America hands Saddam Hussein over to his own people for all the crimes that he had been committing to them for a long time. And he is put on trial. He is found guilty by his own people, and he is executed and he is hanged. All right? This is 2004. And the President of the United States, very famously, more infamously, tailhook lands he was a fighter pilot way back in World War II, Vietnam. Oh, I'm messing that up. He lands his aircraft carrier as a big event. He comes up and says, we got all the bad guys in Afghanistan and Iraq. Mission accomplished. It's infamous because it lasts like another 20 years. What? Well, let's start with this crazy nugget of information. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Not only were there no weapons of mass destruction, there is no evidence there has ever been any weapons of mass. The entire reason America said they had to go into Iraq. What makes it even worse is 10 years later, information comes out that America knew there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they used it as an excuse to invade Iraq. Is this because oil? Because if you can make Iraq a democracy, which is exactly what America thinks is going to happen. If you make Iraq a democracy, all right, and you make Afghanistan a democracy, because that's what happens when America goes in and blows stuff up. They rebuild them, and it's called nation building. And they make them democracies, and then they love America, and hooray, high fives all around. They have access to oil. Oil prices go down. There's all these conspiracy theories come out, and they're like, wait, what? Why go into Iraq? Well, here's where it gets even more difficult. Mission accomplished, right? Yeah, there's no weapons of mass destruction. This is what Iraq looks like. Completely destroyed. Who did that? Did Saddam Hussein do that? America did that. Very quickly in Iraq. Because they're like, oh, they're all Muslims. That's fine. They're all the same. No, they're not. There's two very distinct groups of Muslims in Iraq called the Sunnis and the Shiites. The Sunnis and the Shiites both hated Saddam Hussein. But when Saddam Hussein gets taken out, the Sunnis and the Shiites start fighting each other in Iraq over who gets to run the country, and a civil war breaks out in Iraq. So this is what it looks like before the civil war even takes place in Iraq, and America's like, ruh-roh, like, this isn't what we expected. So this is what Iraq looks like after America shows up. You think they think real highly of America when this is the result of America coming in to liberate you? What about this? This is Afghanistan. This is after America came in to get rid of those awful Al-Qaeda and Taliban terrorist people. America had blown up Afghanistan and then immediately raced over to Iraq. Nobody was here to help these people that were without power, without food, without water. All these people know is America showed up, blew everything up, and then left fully, and America the whole time thought they were doing the right thing. This terrifies the rest of the world. Modern countries, poorer countries, that America just shows up, completely annihilates Iraq and Afghanistan. The rest of the world told them, you can't do it. It's illegal. No. And they do it anyway, and there's no repercussions because there's no military on earth in the 21st century that can stand up to the United States. So, the question here is, how did the American invasion of Iraq set a dangerous worldwide precedent? It's that preemptive strike concept. And why would this scare so many other countries? So, answer that completely. And that's as far as we're going to get today. See you guys tomorrow.